Hello, I'm Jared Taylor with American Renaissance. On December 18th last year, Twitter permanently suspended my account and the account run by my organization, American Renaissance. That very day, we asked why we were suspended, and we got the same reply. Twitter said American Renaissance and I were both, quote, affiliated with a violent extremist group. We wrote back and we said, that's crazy. We have nothing to do with violence and don't know anybody who does. Since then, silence. No reply from Twitter. Now, I'm a patient guy, but this was too much. We are suing Twitter. American Renaissance and I had Twitter accounts for 6 years. We weren't trolls. We were polite. We were factual. And over the years, our two accounts built up more than 70,000 followers. By Twitter's own reckoning, that many followers are worth about $250,000. And poof, one day, all gone, with this absurd excuse about violence. Now, I'm sure we said things that the Twitter people thought were insensitive. And I know that some people say that since Twitter is a private company, it should have the right to kick off anybody it doesn't like. Well, not so fast. Not according to a famous California Supreme Court case called Pruneyard Shopping Center v. Robbins. It's about a shopping center near San Jose, California. It didn't want to let high school students distribute political literature, but the court said it had to. The Pruneyard was private, but the court said its public areas were a public forum, and that the California Constitution guarantees free speech in a public forum, even one that is privately owned. Well, Twitter is a California company and it's subject to California law. It's a private company that was set up to be a public forum. If there is freedom of speech in a shopping center, there sure ought to be freedom of speech on a social network where you're expected to exchange ideas. And right at the very top of Twitter's statement of corporate values, it says in great big letters, we believe in free expression and believe every voice has the power to impact the world. Well, either they believe that or they don't. And the California Supreme Court sure seems to be saying that even if they don't, they are a privately owned public forum and cannot censor speech. So we should win. We have other grounds to sue. When Amran and I started our accounts 6 years ago, Twitter listed the only reasons for which they could kick you off. They were things like you pretend to be someone you aren't, you violate copyright, you publish somebody's passwords or credit card numbers, you do illegal stuff like selling drugs. These are all good reasons to kick someone off. But a year after we started using Twitter, they changed their rules. And they said they could kick you off for any reason or no reason. We never agreed to that. They can't unilaterally change a contract and then just cook up some wild story about violence. They're not getting away with that. And we have other powerful legal arguments. We have something called an UNRRA claim. And Twitter did what's called an illegal conversion. If you like.
I think that Jared Taylor is a good opportunity to discuss two things. Firstly, Jared Taylor is saying the same stuff as every nasty, garbage mouth, skinhead, Nazi Charlottesville guy like Christopher Cantwell has said. He's saying the exact same stuff, but he's saying it in like this, like folksy grandpa, sit down by the fire, Sonny. Let me explain something to you. So, you know, Jared Taylor is savvy. He has a background from the corporate world. He used to be in legitimate publishing a long time ago. And in a way, he is sort of a balancing to the David Duke type who goes out and talks about Zog and you know, the more explicit hate conspiracies. He goes back to the same stuff about cultural Marxism and you know, race realism and all that stuff, and he presents it. He presents it in this old, genteel language. You know, I'm not a big fan of totem policing. I'm not a big fan of, let's not listen to Antifa because they're being rude and the Nazis are being nice. Because, you know, Richard Spencer in a way is sort of a part of Jared Taylor's legacy. The idea of the politically savvy fascist. The fascist who speaks in a soft voice. The fascist who claims to not be about hate. The fascist who just wants a country for his people. You know, everything's so tender, so polite. You know, it's just old folksy wisdom. I'm just a cowboy. I'm just a country preacher, giving you a couple of words about why, you know, let's leave black people alone. You know, they're worse off living with white folk. Let them go on back to their country now. That's the way it's supposed to be, son. And then he hands you a shotgun and tells you to shoot your sick dog. You know what I mean? Liberals, center-right liberals, shitlord liberals, seem to be addicted to the idea of discourse. That, you know, the Reuben right, are very attached to the idea of polite discourse, even about the most polite, egregious shit. You know, Romy Millennial sitting there across from Richard Spencer. Oh, Richard. Oh, Richard. No, the Holocaust isn't that bad, Richard. Richard! You know, it bugs me out. You know, when you know, we've talked about normalization before, and if you want to sort of get the alt-right's perspective on normalization, because they talk a lot of shit, and you know, the skeptics always talk about how harmless it is to just cordially platform the alt-right. The term normie and the phrase red-pilling normies is exactly what it sounds like. It's taking their catastrophic, destructive ideas and normalizing them. Their number one credo online. The whole point of using the internet apparatus. The reason that they're so foot-stamping mad about getting Twitter banned. The reason they're so attached to this lawsuit to get the alt-right back on Twitter is because the entire point of their movement is normalization. That's how fascism takes power, and they do it 1 inch at a time. And what scares me and makes me worry the most here is that what we have in front of us is the most powerful tool for normalizing wild shit that has ever been in the hands of human beings. Jared Taylor could never reach the level of mainstream eyeballs that he reaches on the internet that he reached with his low circulation white nationalist newsletters. There has never been a more powerful tool for legitimizing fascist ideas, for presenting Red Ice TV as a fucking alternative to CNN. You know, run-of-the-mill Republicans, conservatives knew this in the 1970s when they came up with the idea of Fox News, to take John Birch society conservatism, which was very extreme, wild shit at the time, and then wrap it in the veneer of cable news. That's how those ideas were normalized to the public, and now that's standard conservative. Well, if you give the alt-right the pre-purge 2014 Twitter, if you give the alt-right the pre-oversight 2012 YouTube, they will be the new normal. They will become modern American conservatism. And not to say that their ideas, you know, all this race realism and all that shit, these are not non-conservative ideas. They are just conservative ideas from the 1920s, 30s, 40s, 50s, reborn. So they're just they're a movement for political regression. They want 1950s conservatism back, which included all this hateful Nazi stuff. You know what I mean? Like it's always been conservatism. Old school conservatism was always racist, always fascist, always anti-Semitic. And then they just take that 1950s conservatism and they do the admixture of European militarism, and fascism proper. So, I originally thought when I heard about Jared Taylor's lawsuit that it was a fundraising scam, like when Ezra Levant used to run campaigns for in real life lawsuits and stuff on Rebel Media. I used to, it was exposed later that he would use those campaigns to get people's emails in order to continuously solicit money directly to the email accounts. But as I watched more videos and watched Jared Taylor's interview on Red Ice TV about his lawsuit, I started to maybe give him a little more benefit of the doubt in terms of him genuinely wanting or genuinely believing that he could beat Twitter in court, and genuinely believing that this lawsuit could be a means to which he could restore the more polite speakers in his community to a position where they could red pill normies, where they could create normalization. They don't want Gab. They want your platform. They don't want their own platform to talk to each other. That's clear. They want your platform because they want the logo. They're like they're brand whores. They want Hitler did nothing wrong with a hashtag on it. They want a bunch of phrenology shit about black brain size with a YouTube logo next to it. That's how they get legitimacy. And if they get pushed out of mainstream platforms, then yeah, they'll try to turn Gab, like Fox News became a side network to CNN instead of replacing it, since they couldn't get those views on CNN. They'll eventually try to mainstream Gab. They'll try to make Gab an acceptable alternative. But if they can't get that, they want mainstream representation. They want their ideas on the shelf next to like the more banal, boring Republican political stuff, and even left-wing political stuff, because Richard Spencer, for example, conflates his economic platform with the platform of Bernie Sanders. He wants the Sanders brand. He wants to leverage the Sanders brand. And I guess, there's some how do I say this? I picked up an eye for this stuff and an ear for this stuff from my dad being in advertising. I think that by being sort of around for that stuff, because he was in advertising for about 30 years, I know when someone is marketing. I know when someone is branding content. And I know how people sell ideas. I know how people sell you an identity. Buy my shit, and it changes you into something. If you buy this, if you invest in this, if you put your money here, it will transform you. It'll give you something. So, I would just say, on the American Renaissance's lawsuit against Twitter, it is just a means to get Mein Kampf on the shelf next to like Deepak Chopra and Tina Fey's latest book at the bookstore. It's just another push into Normieville.